Aspenfield, a quiet town with just a few hundred households, Helen Granger wasn't someone who stood out. She was a widowed woman living alone in a small white-painted house, with a vine-covered fence and a lavender garden that bloomed brightly. Every spring, locals knew her as Helen who grows flowers, a kind, quiet woman who walked every morning and greeted strangers with a shy smile. She used to be a high school literature teacher. Though she left teaching decades ago, Helen still read poetry every afternoon, often Emily Dickinson or Robert Frost. People said she didn't age, she just grew quieter over time. Her late husband, Richard Granger, died in 1989 from a stroke, while driving home from a teachers' meeting. Since then, her house felt emptier than ever. Helen had no children, no close relatives. She lived with memories, with the voices of those long gone echoing in her mind. Then, in the fall of that year, something strange happened. It was a chilly Tuesday morning in late October. The air was crisp, and maple leaves fell like golden rain on the sidewalks. Helen was walking in the town's central park, as usual, when she saw a young man, his face sweaty, struggling with a broken tree branch near the path. He wore a thick jacket but had scratches on his arm, likely from gardening tools. Helen approached silently, pulled a handkerchief from her pocket, and wrapped it around his wrist. As she tied it, the young man smiled. "I didn't expect to be saved by a wise lady like you," he said. Helen raised an eyebrow. "You think trimming trees is easy? Your generation thinks everything's simple." They both laughed, and with that quick knot of a handkerchief, something began to grow gentle, unhurried, but deep. After that meeting, Helen and Daniel started talking every morning. Daniel Reyes, the young man, was a final-year architecture student from Arizona, interning in Aspenfield for a community green space project. He loved trees, old buildings, and surprisingly, 19th-century poetry. Helen, who thought she had nothing left to look forward to, found herself excited to wake up each morning. She picked bright cardigans, tied her hair with a scarf, and started brewing mint tea to bring along. They talked about books, Gothic churches, unfulfilled dreams from youth, and sometimes just sat quietly under the changing maple trees. Helen felt something she'd forgotten, the feeling of being seen, being heard. One rainy November evening, a rare early snowstorm cut power across the town. Daniel knocked on Helen's door, holding a thermos of hot tea. "I thought you might need some tea. And a bit of light," he said. They sat by candlelight, rain tapping the roof. Helen spoke of Mr. Granger, who hated lavender but quietly bought her a bouquet every year because he knew she loved it. Daniel shared about his mother, who died of cancer when he was 16, leaving an emptiness he couldn't fill. Helen read him a poem. "I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose." Daniel stayed silent for a long time. Then, as if pulled by something unseen, he gently placed his hand on hers. Helen didn't pull away. In that moment, with a snowstorm raging outside, two people separated by over 60 years shared a kiss. So light it was almost like mist, but enough to change everything. From that day, Helen changed. It wasn't obvious to everyone, but those who noticed whispered, "She walks faster. Her eyes have a strange sparkle. I swear her hair's less grey." Helen started wearing old perfume she'd kept for 40 years. She replanted her wilted lavender garden. Each morning, she stood by the window, waiting for Daniel to pass by, like a secret habit. And just when it seemed like a strange romance between two lonely souls, the first letter appeared. That morning, Helen opened her door as usual. The cold air flushed her cheeks. On the wooden porch, instead of the newspaper, was a folded piece of paper, no envelope, no signature. The first line made her heart skip. "Mrs. Granger, stop." Then the second. "Stop now, before it's too late. Or the next to disappear will be him." She felt as if someone was standing behind the fence or the bushes across the street. But the road was empty. The wind sighed softly through the eaves. Helen brought the letter inside, placed it on the table, and stared at it for a long time. She didn't tremble, but her eyes were wet, She told no one. Not the police. Not Daniel. She locked the letter in a drawer. And from that day, she stopped going to the park in the mornings. A love story between an 88-year-old woman and a 24-year-old man was already unusual. But in the shadows, beyond the vine-covered fences and under the cold eaves of the peaceful town, something was stirring. And whatever was targeting them wasn't just the judgment of others. 3 days after the letter, Helen collapsed in her kitchen. There was no loud noise, just a silver spoon hitting the floor, and her hand grasping the table's edge desperately. Daniel, watering plants behind the house, heard the sound of breaking porcelain. He rushed in and found Helen on the floor, her forehead damp with sweat. "Are you okay?" he asked, panicked, supporting her, feeling her heart race under her sweater. Helen shook her head weakly. "Not my heart. Just dizzy." Daniel rushed her to the town's only clinic. Dr. Marley, who had treated Helen for over 20 years, looked at her test results, then up at her, his expression unreadable. "Helen, are you sure you haven't been taking any special medication lately?" "No, I don't even take aspirin unless I really need it." The doctor adjusted his glasses, tapping her file. "I ask because your blood and biochemistry results don't match your biological age." Daniel held his breath. The doctor continued. "Your hormone levels, cell regeneration, bone density, metabolism all are in the range of a healthy woman, about 38 to 45 years old." Helen stayed silent. Daniel's eyes widened. "Could it be a mistake?" he asked. "I checked the sample 3 times. No mistake." The air in the clinic grew thick, as if time stopped for a moment. That evening, Helen sat in her familiar wicker chair in the living room. The old reading lamp cast a soft glow. Daniel sat across from her, quiet, waiting. Finally, Helen spoke. "There's something you need to know. Something I've never told anyone." Daniel sat up straight. "In 2018, I joined an experimental medical study in Denver. It was a tissue regeneration therapy with stem cells. My knees hurt so much I couldn't climb stairs. They said the study would help repair cartilage. I just wanted to walk without a cane." Daniel swallowed hard. "Did it work?" Helen smiled faintly. Her eyes held a mix of surprise and fear. "It didn't just fix my knees. After a few months, I noticed my hair was thicker, my skin brighter. I slept less but woke up feeling stronger. And at some point, the signs of aging slowed down." Helen never knew who ran the study. They called themselves an independent research institute partnered with a European biomedical center. She went through blood tests, MRIs, telomere measurements, a marker of cellular aging. But after the 3rd treatment, they stopped contacting her. No letters, no calls, no results. Helen never heard from them again. Until the anonymous letter appeared. Daniel couldn't hide his worry. It wasn't fear of Helen. It was fear of what was following her. "Do you think the people who sent the letter are the same ones from that research group?" he asked. Helen nodded slowly. "If they know the real effects of that treatment, they might think your body is the key to a medical breakthrough. And they want it back." Daniel frowned. "Take it back how?" "Any way they think works." That evening, as Helen made tea in the kitchen, the back door's glass rattled hard. A small screech, then a soft click, like someone gently turning the latch. Daniel jumped up, checked the door, and found it slightly open. No one was there, but on the wet tile floor was a fresh, muddy footprint. Helen stepped out, her hands shaking, holding the teacup. On the table was a handwritten note. Just one line. "We've watched long enough." That night, Daniel packed the essentials. A few clothes, his passport, some medicine, a pocket knife, and Helen's medical records. "I have a friend, Miguel. His family has a small cabin in the Western Mountains. No phone, no signal, no GPS. It's a safe place for now." Helen looked at her lavender garden through the window. Then she stood, went to her bedroom, and opened a drawer. She took out the old handkerchief, the one she used to bandage Daniel's hand when they first met. She folded it, tucked it into her sweater pocket. Then she whispered, "Let's go." They left town at nearly 3 a.m., when fog blanketed the roads and streetlights glowed faintly like dying fireflies. Daniel drove west, over rough dirt roads through thick pine forests. Helen stayed silent the whole way, until she spoke, soft as a breeze. "I don't think I'm normal anymore." Daniel glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. Her eyes held no fear, just acceptance. "I don't care who you are or what you've become," he said. "I just know. I love you." After nearly 6 hours, they reached Miguel's cabin. It was deep in a valley, swallowed by trees. No electricity, no phone signal, no main road leading in. The cabin was cold and damp, but safe. Daniel started a fire, put a kettle on the wood stove. Helen sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the forest like an oil painting. "Daniel," she said. "Yes? If someone finds this place, promise me you'll run. Don't look back." Daniel walked over, took her hand. "You won't have to run. And I'll never leave you. Never." That night, as Helen dozed in a chair, Daniel heard a strange sound outside the cabin. Not the wind, not branches, a faint hum of an electronic device. Daniel stepped outside, searched around the cabin, and found a tiny GPS tracker under the car. Someone had attached it before they left town. And if that was true, they were never out of sight. 4 days after the strange letter, while Helen made tea in the kitchen, the world seemed to tilt. Porcelain cups slipped from her hand, shattering on the tiles. Everything spun, and she clung to the table, her legs too weak to hold her. Daniel, in the backyard, heard the crash and ran inside. He froze, seeing Helen on the floor, eyes closed, her skin paler than usual. "Are you okay? Look at me." His voice trembled as he held her shoulders, fumbling to call for help. Helen shook her head faintly. No need to call anyone. Just dizzy. But her eyes hinted at something else, like she'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. Despite her words, Daniel took her to the town's only clinic, where old Dr. Marley had cared for her for over 20 years. After running tests, he stared at the computer screen, studying the results like they were impossible. Finally, he looked up, took off his glasses and stared at Helen. "Helen, are you taking any performance-enhancing drugs? Hormones? Cell therapy?" "No. I don't even take Tylenol unless I really need it," she said calmly. Dr. Marley sat up straight, holding the printed results, his hand trembling slightly. "I don't know how to say this, but all your markers, hormones, cell regeneration, bone density match a woman aged 38 to 45. Daniel frowned. Helen said nothing, but her eyes darkened, as if a memory had silently cracked open. That night, they returned to the small house on the edge of town. Rain tapped the porch. Helen sat in an armchair, a blanket over her legs. Daniel sat across from her, holding his breath, waiting. Then Helen spoke, not rushed, not hesitant. Her voice was low and steady, like she'd rehearsed it for years. 5 years ago, I joined a medical trial in Denver. They called it advanced tissue regeneration with active stem cells. The goal was just to ease joint pain. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes mixed with doubt and worry. "And it worked?" "At first, I just wanted to climb stairs without holding the rail. But months later, my hair grew thicker, my skin brighter, my eyes didn't blur at night. And after a year, aging seemed to stop." Daniel swallowed hard. He was in love with a woman who looked elderly, but inside, she was something else. Almost impossible. Helen continued, describing weekly blood draws, strange machines at the research center, and increasingly personal questions about her medical history. After 3 treatments, all contact stopped. No reports, no replies. Helen thought the program was over, until that anonymous letter appeared. Daniel stayed quiet, but his mind pieced together a chilling picture. Someone was still watching them. Maybe the whole time, they were never alone. That midnight, as Helen slept, Daniel lay awake on the living room sofa. A faint click came from the back door, like someone testing the handle. He sat up, crept to the window and peeked through. The curtain. No one was there. Just tree shadows under the moonlight. But the back door was slightly open. He'd locked it earlier. By the door, on the wooden floor, was a wet, muddy footprint. Next to it, a neatly folded piece of paper. No envelope. No name. Just a scrawled line in familiar black ink. "We've watched long enough." Daniel clenched his fists. A chill ran down his spine, not from the night air, but from realizing someone knew exactly where they were, what they were doing, and wouldn't stop. The next morning, Daniel woke early. He packed IDs, some clothes, cash, essentials. When Helen walked into the kitchen and saw him zipping the bag, she asked softly, "It's time, isn't it?" Daniel nodded. He told her about Miguel, his old classmate with a cabin in the western mountains. No phone signal, no official address, almost invisible. If we want a few more peaceful days, that's the only place. Helen looked out the window. Her lavender garden still bloomed, vibrant purple, as if nothing had happened. She turned, went to her room, and took out the faded handkerchief. She folded it carefully, tucked it into her pocket. Let's go. They left Aspenfield at 3:47 a.m. The air was freezing, fog thick as a veil over the road out of town. Helen stayed silent for the first stretch. Daniel gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. They drove over rocky dirt roads, through pine forests, heading west as the town's lights faded behind them. Only when the sun rose did Helen speak, barely audible. "Do you think? If they find us, what will they do?" Daniel answered without turning. "I don't know. But I know one thing, I won't let that happen." By noon, they reached the cabin. The old wooden house was hidden in the forest, near a small stream. No electricity, no phone signal. Quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Daniel lit a fire, boiled water. Helen sat by the window, watching sunlight filter through the leaves. A fragile piece, like the world had stepped back. That night, as Daniel checked the car, he heard a faint beep. Quick, soft, not the crackle of the fire. He knelt, shone a flashlight under the car. A small black device, stuck to the frame with a magnet. A GPS tracker. He ripped it off, his heart pounding. And then, like cold air slipping under his collar, a terrifying truth hit. They were never free. They were being watched. Every step. When Daniel found the coin-sized GPS tracker under the car, it felt like someone squeezed his chest. His heart raced. His mind spun. How long had it been there? A week? A month? Before they left town? He tore it off, threw it into the fire, watching it spark and pop. But that didn't ease the fear. If anything, the feeling that someone knew exactly where they were, and might be close, grew stronger. The next morning, when Daniel told Helen, she stayed silent for a long time. She sat at the table, holding a steaming mug of mint tea, staring out the frosty window. Finally, she sighed. "When we left town, I brought my old handbag, the one they used during the blood tests." Daniel turned, stunned. "You mean they could have planted it back then?" Helen nodded. She closed her eyes, fingers tightening around the mug. "I thought I was smart enough to escape them. But it seems they never left me." By day, the cabin was quiet. But at night, things changed. First, a snap, not wind, but like someone stepped on a dry branch. Then, a faint light in the distance for a few seconds, then gone. Like someone tested a flashlight and hid it. Helen and Daniel sat in the dark, not daring to light a lamp, listening to every small sound, every possible footstep, real or imagined in their fear. The next night, Daniel didn't sleep. He dragged a chair to the porch, holding a flashlight and a wooden stick. Helen objected. "You can't stay up all night, Daniel. Your body won't handle it." But Daniel just gave a small smile. I can't sleep knowing someone might be watching through the window. Helen didn't say more. She brought him a cup of hot tea, rested her hand on his shoulder for a few long seconds, then went inside. That night, the wind howled, and the forest trees whispered like a quiet scream. Around 3 a.m., Daniel heard its footsteps. Slow, careful, near the edge of the woods. He switched off the flashlight, holding his breath. A dark figure stood between two trees, about 50 meters from the cabin. Too far to see a face. Too close to be a lost hiker. The figure stood still, like a statue, for 10 minutes, then dashed as if it knew it was seen. It turned and vanished into the forest without a sound. Daniel couldn't sleep after that. He knew, if someone could stand still for 10 minutes in the dark without making a noise, they weren't alone. The next morning, Daniel risked driving to the nearest town, over an hour away, to buy food. In the store, he ran into Miguel, the cabin's owner. Miguel's eyes widened. Man, you're still here. We're hiding out. Why? Miguel pulled him to a quiet corner, whispering. Last week, 3 men asked about the cabin. Dressed like government types. Said they were looking for a missing relative. They knew the exact GPS coordinates of the cabin. And Helen's name. Daniel's spine went cold. Get out of there, Miguel said. They didn't seem like cops. If they know who you are, they might already be in the woods. Daniel returned to the cabin near dusk. Helen stood on the porch, her eyes worried, like she sensed something was wrong. He didn't say anything, just set the bag down and took her hand. I think we're running out of time. Helen looked deep into his eyes, her voice slow but firm. I'm done running. I've been running half my life. Then, what do you want? I want to know who they are. And why a body that's lived nearly 9 decades is something they can't let go. Helen and Daniel fortified the cabin. They pushed a table against the door, boarded up windows and chained the main lock. Daniel sharpened a stick into a pointed stake, prepared the flashlight, and found an old handheld radio in a toolbox. They didn't know who was coming or when. But when Helen went to her room, opened a drawer, and pulled out her old medical file along with scanned documents from the 2018 trial, she looked at Daniel and said, If we disappear, don't let these disappear with us. That night, everything was strangely quiet. No snapping branches. No flashlight beams. No footsteps. Daniel and Helen took turns sleeping. But near 4 a.m., as Daniel sat alone in the dark, he heard a faint, metallic clink, like someone tampering with a lock outside. He sprang up, shining the flashlight at the door. And then, the main lock was turning. The wooden door creaked softly. Daniel rushed over, gripping the handle. From the other side, a low, male voice spoke. We're not here to hurt anyone. But if you don't open, we'll come in another way. Daniel looked at Helen. She stood in the hallway, clutching the medical file, hands trembling but eyes fearless. She nodded slightly. Daniel let go of the handle. In that moment, as the hinges squeaked and dim light spilled in from outside, they both understood one thing. As the door swung open, 3 men stepped in. No military uniforms or federal vests, but they carried an air of control, like they belonged to a place where rules didn't need explaining. The leader, about mid-40s, with short hair and eyes sharp as a scalpel, scanned the simple cabin before. Settling on Helen. Double quotes, Mrs. Granger, he said, voice low and even. We've come a long way to meet you. That should tell you how serious we are. Daniel stepped in front of Helen, gripping the wooden stake. Who are you? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're from an independent biomedical research agency. We don't represent the government, but we're allowed to work with them. Helen sat down, hands resting on the file. What do you want from me? The man answered without hesitation. What's running through your veins? The man's name was Alden. He said that in 2018, his group tested an activated stem cell regeneration therapy on 14 elderly subjects including Helen. What no one expected. Out of all 14, only one body responded beyond predictions. One body stopped aging. One body reversed biological time. That was Helen. Alden pulled a black USB from his pocket and set it on the table. Your entire research file was erased from federal systems. The doctors who oversaw you have left their posts. No one knows this project exists except us. And now, you. Daniel whispered. Why erase it? If it was a success. Alden cut in, voice flat. Because it was too successful. Alden leaned forward, hands on the table, facing Helen. We're not here to harm you. We're here to protect you from others who are also watching. Come with us. Willingly. We'll keep you safe, give you a secure place, and help you understand what your body is hiding. Daniel narrowed his eyes. And if she refuses? Alden shrugged. We won't force her. But if you stay here, others will come and they won't be as gentle as us. Helen, calm in a way that surprised even herself, gently placed her medical file on the table and slid it toward Alden. I'll go. But on 2 conditions. The cabin's air grew heavy. Alden tilted his head. I'm listening. Helen looked at Daniel. First, he comes with me. No negotiation. Alden nodded. Double quotes. Fine. Second, Helen paused. You tell me, if I have a child, will it be like me? The room went silent. Alden blinked, staring at Helen for a long moment before answering. We don't know. But if it is, it could be the next step in human evolution. After Alden's group left the cabin promising to return the next morning to take Helen to a special testing facility, Daniel locked the door and turned to her. Are you really going with them? Helen nodded slightly. You heard them. If I don't go, others will come. And they might not offer a choice. Daniel sat beside her. I don't trust them. Every offer like this comes with chains. Helen gave a sad smile. You think I don't know? But Daniel, if my body is holding something bigger than just long life, can I keep it to myself forever? The next morning, a black SUV parked 100 meters from the cabin. Helen and Daniel were taken to an underground research facility. No name, no markings. The entrance had retina scans and heat sensors. They were led to a sterile white room, no windows. Helen's blood was drawn. Her body scanned by MRI. After 4 hours of tests, a young female doctor came with results. Mrs. Granger, your organs aren't just not aging, they're producing pluripotent stem cells at the level of an 8-week-old fetus. Daniel was stunned. You mean, her body is regenerating itself? The doctor nodded. Double quotes, and if the baby she's carrying inherits that. Helen sighed, hand on her stomach. She never thought she'd be pregnant at 88. But now she understood. This pregnancy wasn't an accident. It was a result. That evening, Alden visited Helen's room alone. You know, people would kill for what's growing inside you. You and the baby. Helen met his gaze. Will you protect me? Alden didn't blink. No. I'll study you. If you survive, you'll be an icon. If not, you'll be data. Helen smiled, her eyes cold for the first time. Then I'd better have my own plan. Before being taken to isolation, Helen slipped a small note into Daniel's pocket. It read, If you don't see me again, open the hard drive under the 7th floorboard in the cabin. Daniel read it and said nothing. But his heart pounded. Helen had planned for the chance she'd never leave. The next morning, Daniel woke in a locked isolation room. No doctors. No answers when he called. A stranger approached, saying only, Mrs. Granger is no longer here. Daniel shouted, Where did you take her? No one answered. 40-8 hours later, Daniel was released at a gas station on a highway. No explanation. No signatures. No escort. He hitched a ride back to the cabin. That night, he pried up the 7th floorboard. Inside was a hard drive, wrapped tightly in velvet, and a letter. Daniel, if you're reading this, I don't have much time. The hard drive holds all the data from the experiment I was part of. But that's not the most important thing. The important thing is, you must protect the baby. In the next part, Daniel must decide, run with the truth, or face the forces determined to keep it hidden forever. One thing is clear. Helen hasn't vanished. She's been hidden by the same people who took her to the facility. Daniel sat in the damp cabin, the faint flashlight beam hitting the cracked wooden walls. The hard drive felt heavier than it should, wrapped in 2 layers of cloth and plastic. Helen's letter lay beside it, gentle but chilling to the core. He plugged the drive into the old laptop Helen used for local news. A simple interface appeared. One folder, labeled Epoch 1. H. Granger Alpha Subject. Daniel opened it. Dozens of files, test results, histology images, MRI videos, all marked with Helen's name and code E01A. One video started with a familiar voice. Alden. Subject Granger. Female. Biological age 44. Chronological age 88. Cellular reversal confirmed. Immune system response exceeds control parameters. Risk of replication unknown. Fetal compatibility unknown. Daniel froze, staring at 2 words. Fetal compatibility. He fast-forwarded to the latest clip. A grainy video showed Helen in a white exam room, wearing a patient gown, eyes fixed on the ceiling like she was meditating. A female doctor asked, "You know you're pregnant, right?" Helen nodded slightly. "I knew early. My body changed, but not like a normal pregnancy. No back pain, no fatigue. It's just, it knows me. The baby. It's in sync with me from inside." Daniel's throat tightened. They knew about the pregnancy before Helen revealed it. And they didn't want a child. They wanted a product. In a metadata file. Daniel found the temporary storage location for the facility's internal videos. Attached. GPS coordinates pointed to a spot deep in northern Montana's forests, over 500 kilometers from the cabin. Not the main research center. No name. Not on public maps. Just a strange label. BIO19X Black Grove Facility. Daniel wrote down the coordinates. If Helen was alive, she was there. He called the only person he still trusted. Miguel, the cabin's owner and a freelance electronics engineer. Miguel listened to the story, silent for a moment, then said, "Bring the hard drive to me." "I know. Someone in Montana who can track signals. But if you go, you won't come back the same." Daniel replied softly, "I haven't been the same since I met her." 3 days later, Daniel and Miguel drove an armored pickup to the edge of Black Grove Forest. No cell signal, no traffic cameras, no road signs. Just trees. Thousands of trees standing like a silent army guarding secrets. Miguel used a mini-drone with a thermal camera to scan the area. They found a large structure, buried underground only, its moss-covered concrete roof visible, blending with the grass. Miguel looked at Daniel. "You sure, once you go in?" "I'm not leaving without Helen." They waited until midnight. Wind howled through the forest, the moonlight barely enough to see their shadows on the cold ground. Daniel wore a backpack with a signal jammer, a knife and a map of the facility's ventilation system, reconstructed from Miguel's thermal images. They slipped through a rear vent shaft, no cameras, no lasers, just the smell of ozone and the hum of air filters. After nearly 30 minutes crawling through icy metal ducts, they dropped into a level 3 corridor zone for unidentified subjects. Before Daniel could speak, a familiar voice echoed through the intercom. "Daniel." He spun around, looking up. Behind a thick glass wall was Helen. She wore a patient gown, no IVs, no sign of weakness. Her eyes shone, silver hair neatly tied back. She wasn't afraid. She was strangely calm. "They knew you'd come," Helen said, lips tightening. "Are you okay?" Helen met his gaze, slowly placing a hand on her stomach. "The baby, it's changing. Not just my body, but how I feel the world. Do you want to come with me? I'll get you out." Helen paused for a few seconds, then shook her head. If I leave, they won't. Stop. But if I stay, you can keep this safe. She pointed to her gown's pocket. A small silver USB. You need to take it out. It has the full genetic map. Not just mine, but hers. Daniel looked at her. Eyes wet. Heart aching. But he understood. She wasn't saying goodbye. She was passing on a mission. Miguel used an electric pulse device to unlock the secure room. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. The facility's system began sealing off each floor. Daniel clutched the USB, sprinting through the hallway while Miguel held off the guards. Hands grabbed. Shouts echoed. Bodies fell, but Daniel kept running, carrying one thing: the story Helen had started. 3 months later, in a fishing village on Mexico's southern coast, Daniel lived with a newborn girl named Hope. She had bright brown eyes, soft curly hair, and never got sick. Daniel ran a small boat repair shop. The villagers knew him only as the guy from the north, quiet, often cradling his daughter on the beach at dawn. Helen's USB was hidden inside the wooden handle of an oar, hung on the wall. As for Helen, no one spoke of her. But every time Hope smiled, Daniel saw her eyes, her smile, and knew she hadn't vanished. She'd left herself. In the little girl, Puerto Azul was a place where time seemed to crawl. People rose with the sun, slept to the sound of waves. Daniel chose it. For one reason. No one asked questions. A young man, moving in with the newborn folks, just smiled and helped. Hope, with her sparkling brown eyes, never fell ill. No fevers, no coughs, no sneezes. She didn't cry when teething. Insects never bit her, or rather, mosquitoes never landed on her. Daniel raised Hope as his final promise to Helen. He grew vegetables out back, worked at old Ernesto's boat shop, and read copies of Helen's hard drive files every night. The original USB stayed hidden in the oar on the attic wall, a symbol he never touched. One Tuesday morning, before the sun rose, Daniel took Hope to the familiar cafe at the market's edge to buy warm milk. He parked her stroller nearby and stepped inside. Lita, the kind-eyed cafe owner, prepared the milk as usual. But today something was off. A man sat at a corner table under the ceiling fan. Tall, tanned, wearing a long-sleeved white shirt and a wide-brimmed hat like an archaeologist. Whispered to Daniel. He came at dawn, ordered only ice water. Asked a few things about you. Daniel glanced over, his heart skipping. The man looked up, met Daniel's eyes and smiled. He stood and approached the stroller. Daniel hurried over, but before he could speak, the man leaned down to Hope and asked, "Has Hope ever bled?" Daniel froze. For a second, his mind couldn't process the question. "Who are you?" He nearly growled. The man smiled, voice soft as a breath. "I'm the last of the original research team. The ones left after Helen disappeared. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here for science." Daniel stepped between him and the stroller. "What does that question mean?" The man removed his hat, revealing salt and pepper hair and dark circled eyes like someone who hadn't slept in months. "If Hope has never bled, you don't know what you're holding." He introduced himself as Dr. Mathis Quinn, former lead geneticist for EPIC-1. He said Helen's body could trigger a self-restructuring, cellular response and artificial evolutionary reflex. If Hope inherited that gene, and I believe she did, her blood doesn't clot normally. It regenerates, heals itself. If she's been injured, you wouldn't see blood for more than a few seconds. Daniel looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her stroller, tiny hands clutching her blanket, and shivered. Quinn's voice dropped. "But the problem is, other groups are looking for Hope. And they don't want to study her. They want to control her." Daniel trusted no one. He refused to talk more, scooped up Hope, and went home. But at the gate, he saw the back door of his wooden house ajar. He was sure he'd locked it. He handed Hope to a neighbor, pulled out his small knife, and stepped inside cautiously. In the bedroom, the bookshelf was ransacked. Helen's framed photo lay face down. And worst of all, the oar on the wall was gone. The USB with the original data was no longer in the house. Daniel slumped into a chair, hands shaking, sweat beading on his neck. Someone, not Quinn, had found Hope. Maybe a group, an organization. They might have been in the village for days, watching his every move. He called Miguel, explained everything. Miguel was silent, then said, "The USB might be a decoy. They left clues to make you think you're safe." "What about Hope?" Daniel asked. Miguel replied, "Don't stay anywhere too long." Daniel knew peace was over. No matter how beautiful, how calm this place was, it wasn't home anymore. That night, he packed essentials into a backpack. He held Hope, kissed her forehead and whispered, "We're going, baby girl. But this time, we're not running scared. We're going because I know something bigger is waiting for you." Before leaving, Daniel found Quinn, still at the cafe, as if he'd never left. He wasn't surprised. Daniel asked, "Why tell me the truth?" Quinn replied, "Because I'm one of the few who still see science as a duty, not a weapon." Daniel looked into his eyes. "Will you help if I need it?" Quinn nodded slightly. "Not because I trust you, but because hope might be the last choice for a world we can't control anymore." At dawn, Daniel and Hope left Puerto Azul in a pickup truck. No goodbyes, no lingering glances. Just the sea breeze and the morning sun gilding Hope's hair. Daniel drove, hands tight on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, the village faded. Hope sat in her car seat, giggling, reaching for the sunlight like the world was a dazzling game. Daniel whispered, "We'll find a new place. But this time, it's to start, not to hide." That night, at a small hillside motel, Daniel changed Hope's clothes and her tiny fingernails scratched his hand. A thin cut appeared. A drop of red blood rolled down. Daniel gasped. Not from pain, but from what happened next. The scratch vanished in 3 seconds. The skin healed. No trace. Hope giggled, clapping like she'd done something clever. Daniel stared at her, muttering, "You really are Helen's miracle." 3 days after leaving Puerto Azul, Daniel and Hope settled in a highland village in central Guatemala. In a rented room at an old monastery, Daniel sat by candlelight, reviewing printed copies of the hard drive's data, saved before it was stolen. Among them was a thin, handwritten notebook in red ink, unencrypted. The first page read, Alpha. Subject, Granger. Epic_sequence_Delta 1. Daniel flipped through. At first, just clinical notes, cell tracking, recovery rates. But halfway in, something odd. A map not biological, but a world map. Red dots scattered across South America, Eastern Europe, East Africa, Southeast Asia. Each marked Bionode X17. Status, Dormant Bionode R4 status. Decommissioned Bionode V3 status. Active. Daniel realized these weren't research points. They were illegal labs secretly copying Apaquan's genes. On the next page, he found Helen's gene analysis and a lone note. Note, specimen #H1F Hope shows divergence from maternal genome at loci 7, 12, 19. Interpretation, spontaneous gene drift with novel protein coding behavior. Predicts functional immunity, autonomous cell repair, and resistance to programmed aging. Daniel sat frozen in the dark. His eyes drifted to the bed where Hope slept. He didn't grasp all the molecular biology, but one thing was clear. Hope wasn't just Helen's heir. She was a new variant. An unplanned evolution. The next morning, Daniel got a message from Dr. Mathis Quinn, the man from Puerto Azul. They have the original data, but they need Hope to decode protein H delta 13. I found their hub. Daniel called back. Quinn spoke fast. There's an active lab at Peru's border northern Amazon. It was Epiquan's backup data center for unencoded protein sequences. I think they're heading there. If you get there first, you could destroy it. Daniel's voice was low. Or I'll die in the jungle. Quinn chuckled. If so, you'll die for something that matters. Daniel left Hope with an elderly Colombian nun who'd raised orphans after the war. He set out for the Amazon with Luis, a former jungle rescue officer who'd seen flagless helicopters fly over the area without signaling. They crossed muddy rivers, dense forests, treacherous terrain. With every step, Daniel thought of Helen. Her touch on Hope's forehead. Her final words. If you must choose between the truth and her life, choose her. After 3 days in the jungle, Daniel and Luis reached the coordinates for BioNode. V3. It was a moss-covered concrete complex, like a miniature nuclear plant. No guards outside, just a rusted metal door and cameras that didn't move. Luis whispered, "This place looks abandoned but not decayed. Someone's keeping it running." Daniel used an electric pulse device to unlock the door. It opened, and cold, artificial air rushed out, smelling of chemicals and metal. They stepped inside. The main room held dozens of small servers, some blinking green. Daniel plugged in his device and extracted data. Files flooded in. Epiquan, clone drafts, H-Delta-13, viability, map, artificial womb trial 1 diagram showed an artificial womb mimicking Helen's biology, with a note. Tested viable in sim with genome H13F, Hope. Result, 99.82% survival. Daniel couldn't believe his eyes. They weren't just studying Helen. They weren't just tracking Hope. They planned to clone her. An internal email between Alden, the old leader, and an initialed RK stated, if Hope falls to a third party, activate V3 and run the embryo backup program. We don't need the girl, just the code. Daniel shut the laptop, hands trembling. Hope wasn't just hunted. She was being priced. Luis helped. Daniel set up a timed explosive device, a fast-burning thermite from an old military village's abandoned stash. They rigged the entire system. As Daniel pressed the 3-minute start button, he looked back at the room one last time. All the data, the projects, the maps built from Helen and Hope's bodies, would vanish. As they left the complex, Daniel and Louise heard helicopter rotors overhead. A team in black, lightly armed, began descending near the forest edge. Daniel shouted, "They know!" Louise led Daniel into the woods. Shouts echoed behind. A bullet grazed a tree inches from Daniel's face. Sweat and blood mixed with dirt. 30 seconds later, an explosion shook the forest. The ground trembled. Metal shattered. Daniel looked back. Flames rose from BioNode V3, flickering through the trees. Hope was saved once again. Daniel returned to the monastery after 4 days. He was thinner, bearded, eyes shadowed. But when he saw Hope giggling in Sister Lucia's arms, all the pain melted away. Hope smiled, reaching for Daniel. In that touch, he knew, no turning back, but also no more fear. Daniel stood on the small balcony behind the monastery, where pine forests stretched endlessly under moonlight. Hope slept soundly inside, and in Daniel's hand was the old phone the monastery gave him. He checked the time, but a notification flashed. New message, no sender, just a link and a note. For Daniel. Don't let anyone else see. His hand shook. It could be a trap, a virus, or a signal. He clicked. A black web page loaded with a single glowing video play button. Daniel took a deep breath. He pressed play. The screen flickered. A grainy image appeared, a white isolation room. And in the center, Helen. Her hair shorter, eyes slightly swollen, but it was Helen alive. Daniel's jaw dropped, nearly dropping the phone. Her voice began, low, clear, deliberate. Daniel, if you're seeing this, things are worse than I thought. They say I'm dead. I know. I had to let the world believe that. But the truth is, she paused, swallowing tears. They kept me. Not for me, for Hope. Helen explained everything. The night Daniel fled with Hope, Helen didn't die in the Epiquan facility fire as rumored. Instead, a rogue group separate from the government took her away before word spread. Their goal wasn't to save her. It was to extract the final secrets from her mind. Memories of the EPEC project's last phase, unrecorded anywhere else. Why? Because Helen, while captive, had secretly created a reverse gene sequence to disable future clones of Hope if misused. Only she knew how to activate or block the H13 mutation, the gene for controlled immortality. In the video, Helen said, "I couldn't let them know you're alive, or where Hope was taken. I had to stay silent, had to play dead. Daniel, I know you're hurting, and I'm sorry, but if I spoke, you and the baby would never have a chance to run." She looked straight into the camera. But now, they're starting to suspect. I overheard a call. They know you're after V3. And if you're alive, they know Hope is too. Her voice broke. Someone help me send this. You need to find him. His name is Nicholas Skren, former gene research head in Norway. Now hiding at a research station in Greenland's ice. Only he can help you. Protect Hope forever. The video ended with GPS coordinates and an access code for Nicholas's secure system. ARX Delta Victor. Daniel sat frozen, staring at the black screen. Helen was alive, and she was still fighting in her own way. In the shadows, he closed his eyes. The pain, doubt, and anger that weighed him down began to fall away like dust. A new belief grew quietly in his heart. Helen had never abandoned him. She'd sacrificed in a way no one could understand. The next morning, Daniel left his room early. He put on a jacket, packed a small bag, and stood at the monastery gate. "Sister," Lucia asked, "you're leaving again?" Daniel nodded. "This will be the last trip." Lucia looked at him, then went inside and returned with Hope sleeping on her shoulder. She whispered, "This girl isn't like any child I've cared for. She looks at me like she knows what's happening." Daniel gave a sad smile. "Maybe she does." He kissed Hope's forehead and whispered, "I'll be back, my girl. I promise." Daniel flew through Panama, then Oslo, and chartered a helicopter to Greenland's far north where temperatures hit -30, and winds howled year-round. At an old research station amid the ice, a silver-haired Norwegian with steely eyes opened the door. "Nicholas," said curtly, "she warned me. You have the girl?" Daniel nodded. "And I'll do anything to protect her." Nicholas led Daniel to the research basement. There, in the freezing cold, neon lights reflected off a hand-drawn gene map with a large red mark. "Alpha lock point," Nicholas said. "Helen made this. If the girl is cloned illegally, injecting this sequence into synthetic proteins, every copy will self-destruct in 72 hours. Daniel whispered, "And only she knew this sequence." Nicholas nodded. "Now, you do. But you'll have to take it back." Before Daniel could leave Greenland, the station's radar picked up an encrypted satellite signal from South America. A fragmented message appeared. "Target reacquired. Secondary asset in motion. Deploy Sigma unit." Nicholas frowned. No. They're heading to the monastery." Daniel paled. "I have to get back. Hope's there." Nicholas handed him a small device. "This holds the Alpha lock sequence. Don't lose it. No matter what." Daniel gripped it tightly. This time, no one else will have to sacrifice. The helicopter left Greenland. Below, the ice stretched endlessly. But in Daniel's heart, a storm was brewing. He knew. The real fight was just beginning. The morning mist still hung low when Sister Lucia set a teapot on the wooden table by the window, where she read her Bible each dawn. But today she couldn't focus. Something felt wrong. Not Hope, she slept peacefully, but the air outside. It was too quiet. No wind through the trees. No birds. Just a thick, eerie silence. Lucia stood tiptoeing to the courtyard. By the monastery's iron gate, a military truck sat motionless. No one in the village owned such a vehicle. A low, unfamiliar voice came from behind the fence. "We need to speak with Sister Lucia, now." Lucia turned. A man in black, wearing reflective glasses, stood before her. On his shoulder was a Sigma logo in a red circle. 4 others, dressed the same, stood beside him. No smiles. No blinks. Lucia knew. They'd found hope. She stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. "I'm Lucia. This monastery doesn't take unannounced guests." The leader stepped closer. "We're not asking permission. We're here for what's ours." Lucia understood, though no one said it. They weren't here for papers or Helen. They were here for hope. She stayed calm. "The girl's an orphan, left here long ago." The man gave a cold laugh. "Then we'll tear this place apart to confirm." Lucia clutched her cross necklace. Every minute she delayed was a chance for Daniel to return. But how to hold them off? She swallowed hard. "I'll show you around, but I need 5 minutes to lock the chapel." "Someone there is dying." The man raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Lucia answered, unflinching. "Me." Daniel was mid-flight over Colombia's border when a signal came through. A video from the monastery's internal system. He opened it. Lucia stood in a bedroom, face calm but eyes desperate. "Daniel, if you're seeing this, I may not have made it. But hope's still here. They haven't touched her. Come fast. If you're not here in 4 hours, don't come. They'll take her." Daniel's blood froze. He yelled to the pilot. "Speed up. I don't care if it's dangerous. Get to the monastery." At the monastery, Lucia stalled the Sigma team, leading them through old tunnels, down to basements with fake records, opening cabinets full of meaningless papers. The monastery was a maze, and Lucia stretched every second with the desperation of a spiritual mother. But then, they found Hope's room. One of them shouted, "Here she is! The kid!" Lucia rushed to block the door. "No! She's not yours. She's not an experiment. She's a soul." The leader signaled. A soft thud, a tranquilizer gun. Lucia fell like a dropped cloth. Hope cried out in her crib. Sigma moved in. 3 hours later, Daniel landed on the hill to the monastery. Before he could run in, someone yanked him into the bushes. A stranger, eyes sharp but not hostile. "I'm a former agent. Helen saved my life once. I owe her. Now I'm helping you." He showed Daniel's satellite images. 4 Sigma soldiers loading a wooden crate onto a truck. Daniel choked. "Hope." The agent handed him an M4 rifle. "They're many. But you have an edge. You're her father. You've got a bigger reason than any soldier." Daniel and the agent stormed in from behind the chapel. Gunfire erupted, shattering the sacred monastery grounds. A cross on the roof fell as a bullet grazed it. Daniel didn't think he charged toward the crate. A Sigma soldier turned, aiming. Daniel tackled him, slamming the rifle's butt into his head. He pried open the crate and saw Hope. Eyes. Teary but safe. "Baby girl. Daddy's here," he cried. He held her, blood streaming down his forehead, but he felt no pain. They retreated after shooting out Sigma's command vehicle. Smoke rose to the sky. The agent jammed satellite signals. Daniel ran to Lucia, lying still on the ground. Her pulse was faint. He carried her, Hope in one arm, and they escaped through a tunnel behind the chapel, leading to the southern hill. A helicopter waited. Daniel got Hope aboard. Lucia stirred, smiling weakly. "God sent you back. Just in time." The helicopter's blades spun, pulling them from hell. Sigma had failed. This time. In flight, Daniel activated Nicholas's device. He fed in a drop of Hope's blood. The Alpha lock sequence appeared. He extracted it, encoding it into 2 devices. One he kept. One he sent to Nicholas via quantum encrypted signal. Now, if anyone cloned Hope, the copies would fail. Hope was unique.immortal.in. Lucia's luggage. Daniel found an unsent letter addressed to Helen. Helen, if you're still alive somewhere, know that Daniel never stopped loving you. He's the final symphony you left the world. And hope the most beautiful end to your love song. Daniel Reed, tears welling. Hope slept on his shoulder. In the evening breeze. Helen felt present. As the helicopter vanished over Ecuador's sky. Thousands of miles away, in an underground base, a man in a metal mask sat before a screen. They escaped. But we have the DNA. A technician approached. Can we recreate Hope? The man nodded. No. We'll make something beyond hope. Something that doesn't need love to live. Just genetic code to fight. The story isn't over. The real battle is coming. The small seaside town in southern Sweden stayed peaceful as ever. Waves lapped gently, sunlight filtered through leaves, and at the end of a dirt road was a wooden house, where a 6-year-old girl with curly silver hair chased her father across the grass. Hope had grown. Smart, strong, and extraordinary. Daniel sat on the porch steps holding an old photo. Helen in a grey-green sweater, hugging him as a baby. He whispered, "She's like you, Helen, but so different." Hope ran up, eyes shining. "Dad, someone's here." The doorbell rang. Daniel stood. At the door was a woman in a long coat, a badge on her chest, a cross within a constellation, symbol of the World Humanitarian Biology Commission. She introduced herself. "I'm Dr. Elise Vanders. We need to see Hope. Not to take her, but to save the world." Daniel froze. Elise opened her bag, pulling out a thick file. Sigma created 9 Hope clones. They call it Project Chimera. But one failed. Hope X, that child is destroying everything. Daniel asked softly, "What do you need from my daughter?" Elise replied, "Not her power. Her heart." Hope X, a flawed clone, was made from Helen's blood and Hope's genes, but lacked what couldn't be copied. Memories, emotions, connection. The result was a girl with empty eyes, immense strength, and a cold mind. She was out of control. Dr. Elise said quietly. "She doesn't understand love. She only knows she's a product. And she's taking revenge." Hope X had attacked a lab in Iceland, killing the entire science team. Next, Geneva. Daniel asked, "What's my part?" Elise answered, "Only the real Hope can save Hope X. She carries the original. But more than that, she carries Helen's memories, compassion, love." That night, Daniel sat by Hope's bed. She looked at him with clear eyes. "I have to go, don't I?" Daniel took her hand. "No one's forcing you. But out there is a girl just like you, with no one to love her. If you don't help, people will die." Hope was silent, then nodded. "I'll go. But you come too." Daniel smiled through tears. "Always." At an underground research facility in Geneva, Hope X was confined in a titanium room. Scientists didn't dare approach. She didn't speak, eat, or sleep. She just stared at the camera. Hope entered the observation room. The facility went still. Through the glass, 2 girls identical faced each other. Hope spoke softly. "Hello." Hope X tilted her head. A small voice replied, "You're me." But weak. Hope smiled. "Maybe. But I have something you don't." Hope X frowned. "What?" Hope touched her chest. "Love." Hope X frowned, then began to cry. No one predicted what happened next. Hope X asked to touch the real Hope. The team objected. But Daniel nodded. If we made her with greed, let her end with trust. The girls touched hands. A faint light sparked. Hope X collapsed, curling up, then smiled. For the first time, a clone felt warmth. Hope and Hope X lived together in Sweden under the International Commission's protection. The new girl was named Lena, meaning new light. Lena learned to sing, play music, and slowly to smile. Daniel told Lena about Helen, the woman who defied nature to bring life to the world. Lena said, "If her mum loved a son like that, I'll learn to love others." One day, Hope found an old letter in Lucia's wooden chest. It was from Helen, written before she was gone. "If you read this, I may be gone, but I believe in the love I left behind. Daniel, you're my hope, and Hope, you're the miracle I dreamed of in the long night." Daniel froze as his daughter read. Hope wiped tears. Mom didn't need to be immortal. She just needed someone to live for her, love for her. Years passed. Hope became an international advocate for humanitarian biology. Lena stayed by her side, inseparable. Daniel opened an orphanage called Helen's Garden, where children weren't just raised, but taught to love. Their stories spread on TV, in textbooks, through children's drawings worldwide. On Hope's 18th birthday, she stood by the sea, holding her mother's old journal. Lena approached. "What are you writing?" Hope smiled. "A story." "About what?" Hope looked to the horizon. "About Helen, my mom, and Daniel, my dad who taught me that love can't be cloned but can spread forever." Lena asked, "What's the story called?" Hope answered softly, "The World's Most Unexpected Couple." We think strange things only happen in fiction, but sometimes reality is more extraordinary than imagination. An 88-year-old woman, a 24-year-old man, and a daughter born not just from genes, but from a love that transcended time, prejudice, and even death. And now, Hope lives to tell it all.